Hi, this is Lex UK, and this is a shooting AI demo. Now, I previously did a AI tutorial for a very simplistic one for early access, and that was a sort of fantasy-based one. So we had swords, melee punches. So in this one, I'm going to be looking at a gun mechanic. So our enemy is going to be able to shoot at us with a pistol. So I'm going to do this in various different parts because obviously there are different aspects that you need to add, and to do it all in one go would be a very, very long video. So I'm just going to cut it up into sizable chunks. So today we're going to be looking at the wandering mechanic of our puppet, and easy detection and shooting at us. So let's have a look and see what I've made. So here's our character here. I've put some health above his head just so that we can see the damage the shooting does. And you can see over in the background there is our wandering enemy. He's got a gun in his hand. And he's going to ignore our player unless our player gets within his realm of his trigger zone. So let's walk up to him and see what happens. Hello there. Oh! So now he's running after us and shooting us. Not all the bullets are getting to us, but he is shooting at us, and when they hit, our player goes ooh and does a thing. And let's see if we can run away from him. There we go. We've managed to get out of the way, and now he's going back to his wandering animation. So there we go. That's there we go. That's our build. That's what I've built. Let's have a look and see how this is made. Let's just shut all these down for now. Right, okay, so when you put down your puppet logic, then we just put down a new one, fresh one. Okay, that's his puppet logic. First thing to do is to go into the controller logic, go into the controller sensor, and change the possession mode to none. We don't want our player to be able to possess the enemies, so make sure that that is set to possession none. That's the first thing you do. Now we've got some follow behavior here. As you can see, this is the default puppet that's not here, but we do want some information in here. We want these two keyframes. We can make them ourselves, but I mean they've already been made, so we might as well use them. So we're going to leave the follow behavior here for a bit when we make it, and it's not until we get to this part that we're going to delete it. So that's why these two are different, but we're going to concentrate on that a bit later on. Okay, so the first thing you do, you're going to put a gun in his hand. So get yourself a gun, scope it into the hand, get it in the right position, and then we've got an enemy with a gun. So let's just delete our puppet, our new one, and here is our enemy logic. Okay, let's just shut that down now. Okay, so we're going to do it in the controller logic microchip, and we're going to put down our first new microchip, and I've named this one, I've gone in and I've changed the custom icon to a little man and made it blue. So that is, I named it Wander, and this is our first bit of code that we're going to add to our puppet. This is going to control his wandering when he's not following and shooting at you. And the first thing we need to do is get a signal generator. So you go to Sensors and Output and pick a signal generator. That's one of these. Pop it down. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and generate a random signal. If I turn it on and try to ignore all of that's going on, you'll see what is happening is this is creating a random signal. You can see it here. And that random signal is a number between 0 and 0.6. It's doing that every 0.2 seconds. But there is a pause between 2 and 2.8 seconds. And what is happening then is either between 2 or 2.8 seconds, it's going to change what it's doing. So it's going to pick a new number. So let's put out a number displayer. So where's our number displayed? There we are. Let's put it up here. So we're going to display the number in our number displayer. There we go. So that's 0.1. Then back to 0. Then 0.1 again. Then back to 0. Then a 0.6. Back to 0. Another 0. And 0.2. There we go. So that's randomizing our signal and our number. Okay, let's just delete that. So what that is doing is it's sending that signal into a calculator, which is timesing it by 10, so it's giving me a number. So 0.1 becomes 1, 0.4 becomes 4, and I'm going to then pass that into this selector. The selector contains A to F. That's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It should actually be 7. There we are. So if the player, the signal generator is creating a 0, then A is going to be active. If it's a 1, then B is going to be active. And I've wired A, B, D and E to a node because they're all going to do the same thing. And then that node is then wired into the Puppet interface, which has got go forwards on it. So every time that A is selected, he's going to walk forwards. Every time B is selected, he's going to walk forwards. D is selected, he's going to walk forwards. E is selected, he's going to walk forwards. But if C, F or G is selected, he's going to stay where he is. This is why I didn't bother putting in the G before, because I didn't need to, because but let's put it in, okay? So he's going to walk around only if one of these is selected. I've also got a keyframe here. And that keyframe is connected to his running speed. I don't want him to run, so if he is walking forwards, I want that run speed to be 0. So I don't want him to run, I just want him to walk around. So that's what that keyframe is doing. So you set up a keyframe and add it to that node as well. So there we go. So that's his wandering about, but that's only walking forwards. We need another one. We need another selector this time, and that's going to turn him. So I've got 2 rotators. Pop the rotator in. Now you'll want to put the grid on for this, so that you move your rotator up. Now you'll see this rotator is moving anti-clockwise, and this rotator is moving clockwise. The way you do that is that one is 180 and that one is minus 180. That's how you change the rotation. One's negative, one's positive. And I've got that wired up to B and E. both of these are with the movement, as you'll notice. So the B and the E here are both walking ones. So if it chooses B, then it's going to turn and walk, and if it chooses E, it's going to turn the other way and walk. Now you could have another signal generator to have these two completely independent. That's also fine. So set this up and have two lots going. That way these numbers are completely independent of each other, but it does mean that you could have him turning without walking, which looks a little strange. So that's why I've done it this way, and I didn't need an extra signal generator. But if you wanted an extra signal generator to separate it up, you just link that to the movement as well. So he moves and rotates at the same time. So it's up to you whether you want it so that every time B is selected, he's always going to be turning. He's never going to be just walking. But I think this works perfectly fine. Now here is a laser scope. Now the laser scope can be found in here. So when you put it down into your puppet, you'll need to manipulate it into position. So where he's likely to hit things. Now, I don't want him to be able to move forwards if he hits anything at sort of this level. And I've got it so that it's the object needs to be round about here. I've sort of done it to arm's length. So if he was to stretch his arm out there, and we select the laser scope, it's sort of the same length as him stretched out with the gun there. Let's just put his arm back down. So if he hits anything now in front of him, he's going to rotate, he's going to turn. I've also got it wired so he's going to walk forwards as well. So he's going to walk forward and turn at the same time. That gives him a nice turning motion. And I've got a little keyframe where he lifts his arm up like that, sort of like a shrug. That's just an extra little thing that I've put in. Obviously, you can leave that out if you don't want it. Right, so the laser scope is looking for labelled objects. And if in detection mode, you'll see it's looking for collidable and both visible and invisible objects. Because the outside is invisible, we want to make sure that the laser scope's going to detect that, as well as the fact that it's collidable. Now, if you wanted to, I mean, I've got a very small arena here. You may have some, say, guards or something. You don't want them actually going outside a zone. You've got a big world, but these guards are only supposed to be guarding in front of the castle, for example. So therefore, you need to create a zone for them. So the best way of doing that is to have this zone thing that I've got set up here. And in this laser scope here, you could have it so that he's going to bounce off anything called scenery. So you'd make sure that everything that is scenery is labelled up. And he'll look for invisible scenery. Now in the player, you could make it so that it doesn't collide with anything called scenery. So he'll walk through anything called scenery. This is where you should only have this. You're probably going to need 2 laser scopes. One for objects that are collidable and visible, and one for objects that are invisible, collidable and called scenery. So if you're going to have a zone, but that's the way you would do it, so that the player's going to ignore the fact nor anything called scenery, while your NPCs are going to bounce off them and turn around. So I'm just not going to do that for now, because let's just rewind that, otherwise everything's going to start breaking and not working properly. There we go. Okay, so that's what you do. So at the moment it's detecting this invisible collidable wall, and it's got a rotator and the keyframe and the link to the output, and that's it. That's his wandering brain. And as we see, as he's wandering around, let's just pin. Let's pin that, and we can see. So it gets really small when you pin things, but there you can see it's randomizing. It's going through the selector. It's always going back to 0. But there we go. It's going through all the numbers, and he's just wandering around. At the moment he's up against that wall, but he'll turn when we get him on a B or an E here. And if he doesn't, he'll turn anyway, because he'll hit the wall. There we go. Come back in. He'll come back in as soon as he hits a B. Otherwise he's just going to walk around the edge. Come on. There we go. You can see he's turning. Oh, he's walking around this edge. If you want him to, let's just stop that. If you want him to turn a little bit more frequently, you can try that. There we go. The danger is, of course, if you have him with too many turns, he just sort of spins around. So it's good to get as many options as you can going. And of course he's now spinning on the spot as opposed to moving and spinning. So let's just do what I said earlier on. So B and C. So if it's linking to C, we're going to move him as well. There we go. Because I don't want him turning on the spot. I want him moving and turning. There we are. That works quite well, actually. And of course you can change the signal generator to do whatever you want. He's going to keep moving until he gets to the wall, and then he's going to turn. Right, now he's going to ignore this player while he's not possessed, because the next bit that we're going to put in, the gunfire, is only detecting possessed characters. So what we've got is a trigger zone, and now I've put the trigger zone here. I'm going to just move it a little bit. In fact, I might change it. Let's change the trigger zone. This is an ellipsoid, it says. Yeah. There we are. So I think so we've got it now so that the player has got to be in front of him, so it's almost like it's only if he can see you. So if you're behind him, he doesn't know, and that's really useful for stealth type games. So you can sneak up on your enemy and he won't shoot you, and you get him in the back of the head type of thing. So we've got our trigger zone in the front there, and you can change all the zone shapes to whatever you need them to be. So he's looking for a possessed controller sensor, and when he finds one, then we're going to have our follow behavior. So what we did was we dragged our follow behavior out of here into here, and just deleted everything. So all we're left with are these two keyframes, and this is turn off auto jump, and this is follow. So if I open up his puppet tweak menu and we'll go to the behavior and I'll select turn off auto jump. You'll see, there we go, that's turned off, and this one is turned on, turn towards and follow. So this is where you do the settings for at what point he continues to follow. I'm going to have him stop at 1.7 meters. And we've got a 100-meter radius for him to follow, but he's only going to follow if he's in the trigger zone that we chose as well. So this one is going to overwrite this one if it's smaller. If I get this right. But get those the same, and then you've got you know where you stand. So he's going to turn towards the player because it's looking for a look at me tag. The look at me tag is inside all of the default puppets. You can put your own tag in there if you want, if you just want to make sure and take the look at me tag out. But there we go. The look at me tag is in there already, so that's what we use. So we're going to turn towards him, and then we're going to follow our character, and that's what's turning that on. So when you're in the zone, immediately the follow behavior starts. And that's it there. That's the two follow behaviors. Then we have an inner trigger zone. This is where the puppet needs, the player puppet needs to be before he's going to shoot. Now I've got this quite small, so we can increase the size of that trigger zone. Like that, and I've got it so that he needs to be in front. Let's just move that a little bit more forward. There we go. So it's if the player is in front of our enemy, that is when he's going to shoot. Now then, let's have a look at the shoot mechanic. Again, we've got a signal generator in here, and this is going to generate our shooting. But there we go. First of all, a keyframe. This one here. This is activating the look at me. Look at me should already be active, but this is just making sure. And this one, this is raising his gun. So there we are. I've raised the gun so it's sort of in the middle of his chest. So his hand is up and the gun is sort of in the middle there. So use a keyframe just to raise his hand up. Then we've got a signal generator. This is generating a one per second signal. So it's going to shoot 1 per second. And that is wired to a timeline. And in our timeline here, we've got a sound effect. Sounds like a gun. I've got no sound, and I don't know why I've got no sound. I don't know if you've got any sound. If you can hear anything. Let's just see. I've got sound. Maybe it's because it's not turned on. Oh, there it is. I've got sound now. Don't know what happened there. Okay, so we've got a sound of a gunshot there, and that's just in a timeline. The timeline is set to play once. So every second, while the player is in the trigger zone, it's going to fire a shot. Now we've got another trigger zone, and this is the gun zone. So if the player is standing anywhere within this cone coming off where the gun is, then we're going to say and a signal is sent. So this is being fired and the player is standing in the trigger zone. We're going to say you're going to be shot. So we'll just check that. So if the shot has been fired, so we've got an end trigger here for the shot, and the player is standing in the trigger zone, then I've got this wired to a counter which then turns on this timeline. This timeline here has got a pain reaction. It goes, ooh, like that. That pain reaction is for the player to say, I've been shot. And so when on end trigger, that's going to reset this counter, so we can keep shooting, getting shot. So it's just going, send a message, play it once, rewind, send a message, play it once, rewind. And then the other end trigger is then turning on the power to a health modifier. And this is looking at per hit and zone. So when it's turned on, and we've got a zone which is going to match, if we select it, can we see the zone? You should be able to see the zone, and we can't see the zone. Typical. Right. Can we see the zone now? Is that the zone? Oh, it is the zone. There we go. That is the zone. It should match the gun zone. So you set them up so that they are the same, or nearly the same. I can't put them both up at the same time, but that's basically the same as the gun zone is the health modifier zone. So if the player's standing there in the zone, he's going to get a -10 on his health. And once this is playing, I'm sending a message saying hit, and that is going to our player. I could actually, we could have wired it, so currently modifying goes in, but I've decided to do this so that it's wireless. So I'm sending a message saying hit, and inside my puppet logic, if it finds the hit from wireless receiver anywhere in the scene, then we've got this keyframe, and that's him being hit. It's really simplistic, and you'll do a much better job, but there we go, that's its keyframe. So when he's hit, he'll go, and his arms will go up, and he'll lean backwards slightly, and that's the hit. So in our puppet controller logic, we've got a health manager and a number displayer. That number displayer is above there. That's showing his current health. So when we get hit, we can see those going down as he gets shot. And that's it. That's what I've built so far. Obviously, there's more to go, a lot more to go. We've got more AI and things that we can put into our character. And also we need to put in some shooting mechanic. Now you'll notice there are no bullets, no projectiles, nothing, no laser scope in this gun. It's done with trigger zones, and there is nothing that hits anything. Because they are bullets, because naked eye can't see a bullet anyway, it makes no sense to have anything being fired. We wouldn't see a bullet, so we don't need an actual bullet to exist. So a lot of people get confused when they're making gun mechanics, is because they think they need to have a bullet coming out of the gun. You don't. The other people is they use the laser scopes. Now, why haven't I used a laser scope? The laser scope, if I show you, well, you saw, the laser scope is a fine line. It is in a very defined length. And so the chances of my my character actually standing exactly in line with this gun in order to be shot is actually quite small. So we need that. And you can't make the laser scope thick or bigger or give it a range. So that's why we use a trigger zone. So it's a case of like, is the player standing in the trigger zone, and when the puppet fires, in which case he's going to be shot. don't make your trigger zone massive, because then it makes no sense, because you don't want the player to be standing over here and he shoots forwards and then it catches your player. That doesn't make any sense. So get it so that the zones do make sense and it does look as if the player has shot you. And I think it's quite a successful little AI as it is, and that works. Now, in order to get the wandering and the gun thing separate, what we've got here is gunfire, and you'll see there is a wire going from our initial detected trigger zone into a NOT gate. So detected into the NOT gate, and this is what sets off our wander mechanic. So if you are not in the trigger zone for the player, for the enemy to spot you and chase after you, then the wandering brain is activated. If, however, you are in the zone, then this NOT gate means this is going to be turned off, and this microchip will be turned off. So it's either the enemy is either running this microchip or this microchip. It's never going to be running both of them at the same time, and that's quite important. We don't want them running both at the same time, because it's going to all get all really muddled and everything else. So there we go. There's very simplistic. Now let me just say, first of all, that is simple AI, and this can get a lot more complicated. And what I would like you to do, my viewers, if leave in the comments, what would you like, how complicated would you like this to get? What would you like these enemies to be able to do? Leave it in the comments. I will attempt it. I'm not guaranteeing that I'm going to be able to do it, because it's depending on what you ask. But if you're wanting to make enemy AI and you're thinking, I really want it to be able to, then leave it in the comments and I'll see if I can add this in. So we're going to start off just getting some very simple mechanics down. So next time I'm going to be looking at the player character and getting a gun in his hand, and seeing how we can do a similar build in the player so that he can shoot our enemy. And then we're going to start adding in all these extra AI stuff that you want, if we can do it. So thanks for watching. Hope that was useful, and I'll catch you in your dreams.